December 12, 1935, Heinrich Himmler signed documents creating one of Nazi Germany's most disturbing programs, and one you've probably never heard of: Lebensborn, the Fountain of Life. What started as maternity homes for unwed German mothers evolved into something far darker: a systematic program to breed a master race, recruit women to bear SS children, and ultimately kidnap up to 200,000 children from occupied countries. This is the story of Nazi Germany's secret breeding program and its forgotten victims. To understand Lebensborn, you need to understand the Nazi obsession with racial purity and their fear of Germany's declining birth rate. Throughout the 1920s and early 1930s, German families were having fewer children. For a regime fixated on creating a 1,000-year Reich populated by racially pure Aryans, this was catastrophic. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsfuhrer of the SS, had a solution. On December 12, 1935, he founded Lebensborn e.V., which translates to Fount of Life. The official mission was simple: increase the birth rate of children who met Nazi standards of racial purity and genetic health. But this wasn't about encouraging marriage or family values. This was eugenics, the belief that you could breed superior humans the same way you breed racehorses. Himmler believed the men of the SS represented the biological elite of the German race. If these men fathered enough children with racially pure women, Germany could reverse its demographic decline and populate its future empire with a master race. The program began modestly. Lebensborn would provide support to unwed pregnant women who met strict racial criteria. In the 1930s, Germany, unmarried mothers faced severe social stigma. Lebensborn offered these women a solution: come to our discreet maternity homes, give birth in secret, and either raise your child with our support or place them for adoption with carefully selected SS families. But there was a catch. Not just any pregnant woman could access these services. You had to prove you were racially pure. The application process was invasive and dehumanizing. Both mother and father had to pass a racial purity test administered by SS doctors. They needed to trace their family lineage back at least 3 generations, proving there was no Jewish, Slavic, or Romani ancestry. Physical characteristics mattered enormously. Blonde hair and blue eyes were strongly preferred. The SS screened applicants' medical histories for any sign of disabilities. Even personality traits were considered inheritable. Nazi eugenics theory claimed that loyalty and bravery could be bred like physical features. Of all the women who applied to Lebensborn, only 40% passed the test. The rest were rejected, deemed insufficiently pure. Women desperate for help, pregnant and facing social ostracism, were turned away because their eye color wasn't right or their great-grandmother came from the wrong part of Europe. This wasn't social welfare. It was selective breeding applied to human beings. The first Lebensborn home opened on August 15, 1936, in Steinhöring, near Munich. It wasn't a sterile medical facility. It was luxurious by contemporary standards. The Nazis wanted to make the program appealing, so the homes were furnished with the best available, much of it looted from Jews sent to concentration camps. The homes provided comprehensive prenatal care, private rooms, and comfortable surroundings. The program covered all expenses. Women could give birth far from their hometowns, avoiding judgment. Himmler took personal interest in every detail. By the time World War II began, Lebensborn had established 33 facilities across Nazi-controlled territory, 10 in Germany, 9 in Norway, 2 in Austria, and others in Belgium, Holland, France, Luxembourg, and Denmark. The majority of mothers were unmarried. By 1940, 70% were single. Many were young women who had relationships with SS officers. Some were committed to Nazi ideology. Others were simply desperate and alone. Initially, Lebensborn functioned primarily as maternity homes. But as the program evolved, it took a darker turn. The Nazis didn't just want to support mothers who happened to be pregnant with Aryan children. They wanted to actively increase the number being born. The SS began recruiting. Young women in the League of German Girls were specifically targeted. Leaders identified girls who matched the Aryan ideal and encouraged them to view bearing children for SS officers as their patriotic duty. The Lebensborn homes became meeting places where racially pure women were introduced to SS officers for the explicit purpose of conceiving children. This wasn't dating, it was breeding. In 1939, as World War II began and German casualties mounted, Himmler issued a direct order to all SS and police officers. Father as many children as possible to compensate for war losses. Marriage was irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was producing racially pure children. SS men were encouraged to have relationships with multiple women and father children with all of them. This created controversy even within Germany. Many Germans were uncomfortable with the state essentially endorsing adultery and treating women as breeding stock. But Himmler didn't care. The master race needed to be built, and traditional morality was an obstacle. By the war's end, approximately 8,000 children had been born in Lebensborn homes within Germany, and about 25,000 in occupied territories, with 8,000 to 12,000 in Norway alone. But these numbers reveal the program's second, even darker phase. As German forces occupied Europe, Wehrmacht soldiers and SS officers had relationships with local women, sometimes consensual, often coercive, occasionally rape. These relationships produced children. Under Nazi racial ideology, if the mother had sufficiently Aryan features, Lebensborn would take control of the child. In occupied countries, Lebensborn homes took babies born to local women and German soldiers, then transferred them to Germany for adoption by SS families. The children would be raised as Germans, their original national identities erased. After the war, these children faced brutal stigma. In Norway, children fathered by German soldiers were called Tiskerbarn, German children, and were viciously ostracized. Some mothers were publicly shamed, their heads shaved, paraded through streets. The children faced decades of discrimination. They were innocent victims, treated as living reminders of collaboration and shame. Yet as terrible as this was, it paled in comparison to what came next. In 1939, Lebensborn became complicit in one of the Nazi regime's most disturbing crimes, the systematic kidnapping of children from occupied territories. The logic was grimly straightforward. If racial characteristics were inherited, then children in occupied countries who had blonde hair, blue eyes, and other Aryan features must have German ancestry. They were Germans living in the wrong place, being raised by the wrong parents, speaking the wrong language. Himmler himself explained, "It is our duty to take these children with us to remove them from their environment. Either we win over any good blood that we can use for ourselves and give it a place in our people, or we destroy this blood." Children who looked sufficiently German would be kidnapped and Germanized. Children who didn't would be eliminated. The SS began seizing children, often in full view of their parents. They would arrive at villages, schools, or orphanages, conduct physical examinations, and take children who met their racial criteria. Children were classified: desirable, acceptable, or unwanted. Children deemed unwanted were sent to concentration camps or killed. Children in other categories were sent to Lebensborn facilities for Germanization. Imagine being 6 years old, speaking Polish or Czech or Norwegian, living with your family. Then soldiers arrive. They examine you, measuring your head, checking your features. They take you away. Your parents are screaming. You're brought to a facility where no one speaks your language. The nurses tell you your parents abandoned you. They weren't your real parents anyway. You're German. You've always been German. Your name is changed. Your birth date is changed. Your entire identity is erased. You're forbidden to speak your native language. If you cry for your mother, you're punished. If you resist, you're beaten. Children who refused to cooperate were sometimes transferred to concentration camps, where many were murdered. If you accepted the new identity, you'd be placed with an SS family who believed they were adopting a German orphan. You'd grow up speaking German, believing you were German, taught to hate the country you actually came from. This happened to thousands of children. The exact number will never be known because the SS destroyed most records. The Polish government estimated 10,000 children were taken from Poland alone, with less than 15% ever returned. Some estimates suggest up to 200,000 children were kidnapped across all occupied territories, though more conservative estimates place the number around 20,000 to 25,000. After the war, approximately 10,000 foreign-born children were found in American-controlled Germany. Of these, 340 had been processed through Lebensborn facilities. In post-war trials, the court found evidence of kidnapping but couldn't prove the full extent of Lebensborn's involvement because records had been destroyed. But the absence of documentation doesn't mean the crimes didn't happen. It means the perpetrators successfully destroyed the evidence. Children born into or processed through Lebensborn faced extraordinary challenges after the war. German Lebensborn children often grew up without knowing their true parentage. Many were raised by adoptive SS families who either didn't know the truth or refused to acknowledge it. Kidnapped children who were recovered faced a different nightmare. Some didn't remember their original families or languages. They'd been successfully Germanized. When authorities tried to return them, the children resisted. They believed they were German. In several cases, German families refused to give up the children they'd raised. Legal battles ensued. Some children were never reunited with their biological families. Norwegian Lebensborn children faced brutal discrimination that lasted into the 21st century. In 2005, the Norwegian government formally apologized and offered compensation, acknowledging they were innocent victims who had been unjustly punished. German Lebensborn children began breaking their silence only in recent decades. For years, shame kept them quiet. Many spent lifetimes searching for information about their biological parents, often hitting walls of destroyed records. Researchers have spent decades tracking down survivors and documents, but huge gaps remain. Thousands of stories will never be recovered. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of Lebensborn is that almost everyone involved was a victim, except the architects. The mothers were told they were serving the Reich when they were being used as breeding stock. The children born in the homes grew up without their biological parents, valued only for their racial characteristics. The kidnapped children had their identities stolen, their families destroyed, their childhoods weaponized. Even the SS families who adopted these children were victims in a sense. Many genuinely believed they were helping orphans. When they learned the truth, that their children had been stolen, they faced impossible choices. What makes Lebensborn particularly disturbing is how it demonstrates the logical endpoint of racial ideology. The Nazis didn't just want to eliminate people they deemed inferior. They wanted to actively breed superiority. They reduced human beings to genetic material, children to products, motherhood to a state function. The Lebensborn program remains relatively unknown compared to other Nazi crimes, and that's dangerous. It's easy to understand the horror of concentration camps, but Lebensborn shows how evil can disguise itself as social welfare, how horror can be dressed up in pleasant surroundings and bureaucratic efficiency. Those maternity homes with their comfortable rooms were tools of genocide, not through killing, but through breeding and cultural erasure. Eugenics didn't die with Nazi Germany. Forced sterilization programs continued in multiple countries for decades after World War II. Even today, we see echoes in discussions about genetic engineering and designer babies. The specifics change, but the underlying idea that some lives are more valuable than others remains dangerously seductive. The Lebensborn children spent their lives piecing together their identities, searching for parents and siblings, dealing with shame that wasn't theirs to carry. We don't talk about Lebensborn enough. Maybe because it's uncomfortable. Maybe because acknowledging it means confronting that ordinary people, doctors, nurses, social workers, participated in the system, often believing they were doing good. But that's exactly why we need to talk about it. Because the road to atrocity is paved with people who think they're helping. Because systemic evil rarely looks evil to the people participating in it. Because if we don't understand how programs like Lebensborn happened, we won't recognize their modern equivalents until it's too late. The children of Lebensborn deserved better. They deserved to know their parents, their real names, their true histories. They deserved to grow up without shame. The fact that they didn't get any of that is a tragedy we need to remember, not just to honor their suffering, but to ensure it never happens again.